The sudden flash of blue and red lights pierced the dark night, casting an eerie glow across the street. Tasha's heart raced as she hurriedly pulled her jacket tighter around her body, trying to block out the cold air that seemed to freeze everything around her. Her breath came in shallow bursts, her mind racing as she stood frozen on the steps of her modest home. The noise of the sirens was deafening. It wasn't the first time she had encountered the police, but tonight felt different. A single mother of 2 young children, Tasha knew what it meant to be vulnerable. She had always managed to keep her head down, pay the bills, and get her kids to school. But tonight, standing on the porch with her heart pounding in her chest, she felt something shift. Something deep inside her told her this situation wasn't going to be as simple as the others. Her young son, Malik, and daughter, Destiny, were inside, oblivious to the chaos outside. Tasha had just stepped out to get some fresh air after a long day. It had been a week since her ex-husband had stopped sending child support, and the bills were piling up. She had been on the phone with her landlord earlier, trying to negotiate an extension. But now, with the flashing lights outside, none of that mattered. The officer stepped out of the patrol car with purpose, his boots crunching the gravel underfoot. His face was stern, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Officer Williams. Tasha had seen him around before. He was known for being harsh, quick to escalate situations. His reputation preceded him. "Ma'am, step aside," Officer Williams barked, his voice cutting through the air. Tasha froze. She hadn't done anything wrong. But that didn't matter. The officer was already moving toward her, and his partner, a younger cop named Jones, was stepping out of the car. Tasha's stomach tightened. She could feel the tension in the air, a weight pressing down on her chest. "I'm just standing here," she said, her voice wavering slightly. She didn't want to sound nervous, but fear had a way of creeping into your voice when you didn't know what was going to happen next. Officer Williams didn't answer right away. He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. With no one to help, made Tasha's skin crawl. "Ma'am, step aside," Officer Williams said again, this time with more force. She had no choice. Tasha took a step back, trying to give him space. But as she did, she saw Officer Jones move toward her, his hand outstretched. Before she could react, he grabbed her arm, pulling it firmly. "What do you think you're doing?" Tasha demanded, panic rising in her chest. Her voice was louder now, a little more desperate. She tried to pull away, but Officer Jones wasn't letting go. His grip tightened, and her arm throbbed with pain. "Just relax," he said, his tone cold and dismissive. Tasha's heart raced. She wasn't a stranger to confrontation, but she had never been in a situation like this. Not like this. She looked down at her wrist, where Officer Jones's fingers were digging in, and she felt something snap inside her. "You have no right to do this," she yelled. "Let go of me." But the officer only sneered, tightening his grip further. The fear was suffocating now. Tasha knew that if she didn't do something, things could get much worse. She needed help. Fast. Without thinking, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her fingers fumbled with the screen, her hands slick with sweat. She dialed the one number she knew would answer. The one person who could stop this. The one person who wouldn't be intimidated. Her brother. Marcus. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Tasha could hear his voice, calm and collected, even as she tried to get her words out between breaths. "Tasha, what's going on?" His voice had a strength to it that made her exhale with relief. They're harassing me, Marcus," she gasped. "There." Before she could finish, Officer Williams barked another command. "Ma'am, I'm not asking again. Step away from the vehicle." Tasha's voice shook as she tried to explain the situation to Marcus. "It's the cops. They're not letting me go. They've got me in a grip, and I don't know what to do." "I'm on my way," Marcus interrupted. Stay calm. Just stay there. Do not let them take you anywhere. Tasha's mind whirled as she clutched the phone tighter, hearing the determination in her brother's voice. Marcus had always been protective. Always. But he wasn't just her older brother. He wasn't just someone who could stand up for her in a fight. No, Marcus was different. He was someone who could get things done. He was a force in his own right. Before Tasha could say another word, she heard the unmistakable roar of an engine in the distance. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was almost deafening. It wasn't just any car. Tasha knew that sound. It was Marcus's car. The engine purred like a beast, the low hum signaling the arrival of something bigger than the situation unfolding in front of her. Tasha turned her head, catching a glimpse of the patrol car's flashing lights reflecting off the windows of nearby houses. The officers hadn't noticed the car pulling up yet. But she could feel it. Marcus was close. Closer than she had expected. In her moment of fear, she realized something profound. This wasn't just a chance encounter. This wasn't a random happening. The presence of her brother, someone with the experience, the training, and the authority to end this now, was no accident. She had no idea what Marcus would do, but she knew one thing: this wasn't going to end like all the others. The officer's voice broke through her thoughts. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, ma'am." But then, something changed. The atmosphere seemed to shift, the tension rising as the unmistakable sound of Marcus's engine roared to a stop just behind the officers' patrol cars. Tasha felt her heart skip a beat. There was something powerful about the sound of his car. Something that made everything else feel smaller. The officers turned their heads in unison, their postures stiffening as they realized who had just arrived. Tasha held her breath. A door slammed shut. And then, a voice rang out from the shadows. "Is there a problem here, officers?" The night air grew colder as Marcus stepped out of his black SUV, the doors slamming shut with a heavy thud that echoed down the quiet street. The sound of the vehicle's engine died away, leaving only the distant chirping of crickets. Tasha's heart raced as she watched her brother approach the officers, his stride purposeful, his presence commanding. Officer Williams and Officer Jones turned to face him, their body language stiffening in an instant. Tasha could see the tension on their faces, the sudden realization that the situation had just shifted. There was no mistaking Marcus's demeanor. He wasn't just any man. He was a man with power, authority, and a reputation that preceded him. His gaze, sharp and unwavering, locked onto Officer Williams. The moment was surreal for Tasha. The feeling of helplessness that had flooded her veins moments before slowly began to fade, replaced by something else, something unfamiliar, yet comforting. Her brother was here. The man who had raised her, protected her, and always kept his word, was now standing between her and the officers. The fear that had consumed her earlier now transformed into a quiet but fierce hope. "Is there a problem here, officers?" Marcus's voice was calm, but the undercurrent of authority was unmistakable. Officer Williams took a step back, glancing at his partner. Officer Jones was visibly tense, his hand still gripping Tasha's arm, though not as tightly as before. The younger officer's eyes flickered from Marcus to the ground. It was clear he wasn't sure how to respond. "Sir, this is none of your business," Officer Williams replied, his tone defensive, but there was a slight hesitation in his voice now. It was as though he could sense the shift in power. He looked at Tasha, who was still standing there. Her wrist aching from where Jones had grabbed her. "We're just handling a situation with this woman." Tasha's chest tightened, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her brother's mere presence was enough to unsettle the officers. Marcus took another step forward, his eyes never leaving Officer Williams. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, his voice low and deliberate. "But I'm afraid I'll be the one to decide what's a problem here." A tense silence fell over the street, as if the world had paused to watch what would happen next. Tasha held her breath, her heart beating faster as the seconds dragged on. She knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. Marcus wasn't here to talk, he was here to take control. Officer Williams opened his mouth to speak again, but Marcus raised a hand, silencing him. "You don't want to escalate this," he said, his words carrying weight. "You really don't." There was a flicker of uncertainty in Officer Williams's eyes, but he quickly masked it with a forced expression of authority. "She's being difficult, sir. We're just trying to." "Trying to what?" Marcus interrupted. "You're harassing her, and you know it." His words were sharp, each one punctuated with a calm confidence that made the officers uneasy. "You've made your point, Williams. Now it's time to step back." Officer Jones seemed to wilt under Marcus's gaze, his hand dropping from Tasha's arm. It was a small gesture, but it was enough to signal that the tide had turned. Tasha's mind raced. She couldn't believe what was happening. Her brother, a man who had spent years in the military, a member of the most elite special forces, was here. He wasn't just protecting her, he was dismantling the officer's power, piece by piece. Officer Williams clenched his jaw, visibly struggling to maintain control of the situation. But it was clear the balance had shifted. The younger officer stepped back, his eyes darting between his partner and Marcus. "We don't want any trouble," Officer Jones muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Marcus gave a slight nod, his expression unchanging. "Then walk away. Let her go." For a moment, there was a standoff, the tension hanging thick in the air. Tasha could feel the weight of the moment, the gravity of what was happening. It wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't just about the officers who had tried to intimidate her. It was about something bigger. Her brother had just stepped in, and he wasn't backing down. Williams shot one last look at Tasha, his eyes filled with frustration. "This isn't over, lady," he spat, his words dripping with disdain. Tasha stood still, unwilling to show any sign of weakness. "It is for me," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The officers hesitated one last time before turning and walking back to their patrol car, their footsteps quick and purposeful, as though they couldn't leave fast enough. As the car's engine roared to life, Tasha exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The flashing lights disappeared into the distance, leaving behind nothing but silence. Marcus turned to her, his gaze softening for the first time. "You okay?" he asked, his voice lower now, laced with concern. Tasha nodded, though her chest still ached with the remnants of fear. She couldn't speak at first. The emotions were too raw. She wanted to cry, to shout, to hug him. But instead, she just stood there, trying to catch her breath. "I didn't think you were going to show up," she whispered. I thought I was going to be." "Shoo," Marcus cut her off, pulling her into a tight embrace. He smelled like the leather of his jacket and the faint trace of engine oil, familiar scents that had always comforted her. "I'll always show up for you, Tasha. Don't ever doubt that." She closed her eyes, allowing herself to lean into him, to feel his strength. In that moment, all the fear, all the anxiety she had felt just minutes before seemed to drain away. She was safe. Her brother was here. He had come through, just like he always did. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus pulled back, his hands resting on her shoulders as he looked at her seriously. "You know what's going on, right?" His tone was sharper now, a touch of concern creeping into his voice. Tasha blinked, trying to focus on his words. "What do you mean?" "You know those officers weren't here just for a routine check," Marcus said, his voice low and intense. "They were after something. And I don't think it was just you." Tasha frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know yet," Marcus said, his eyes scanning the street as if expecting someone else to appear. "But I'll find out. And when I do, I'll make sure you're safe." Tasha felt a chill run down her spine. She had always known there was something off about the situation, but hearing Marcus speak about it like this made her realize just how much danger she had been in. It wasn't just about harassment anymore. This was bigger. Her brother's voice broke through her thoughts. Get inside. We'll talk later. I need to make a few calls. Tasha hesitated but nodded. As she stepped toward her front door, she glanced back at Marcus, who was still standing there, watching the road with a gaze that seemed to pierce through the night. The night seemed to grow even darker after the officers had left, but Tasha felt a strange sense of relief. Her brother Marcus was here, and no one could touch her now. Or so she hoped. As she closed the door behind her, she let out a deep breath, sinking into the small, cozy living room. The familiar warmth of her home wrapped around her, but her mind was far from calm. The incident with the police had shaken her more than she wanted to admit, and her brother's warning had only added to her sense of unease. Inside, her children, Malik and Destiny, were sitting on the couch, unaware of the danger that she couldn't leave him to face whatever was coming alone. The man in the hallway sighed. You can't change anything, Mia. Your father's past is coming for him. And you're just another casualty in his war. That was when Mia's father did something she never expected. He moved. He pushed her toward the back door, his hands firm but gentle. Go, Mia. Now. She wanted to fight, wanted to stay, but her father's strength was undeniable. He wasn't going to let her be caught in this fight. He wasn't going to let her die for something he had done. Mia's feet were moving before she could stop herself. Her father's push was the final push she needed. She ran, her heart thudding in her chest, her legs propelling her through the small motel room and out the back door. The cool night air hit her face, but she barely noticed it. She didn't look back. She couldn't. She had to keep running. Behind her, the sounds of footsteps echoed. The man's voice called out, but Mia didn't stop. Her breath was ragged in her ears as she sprinted across the dark parking lot, looking for any escape. Her mind was racing, but the fear that had gripped her earlier was now tempered with a cold determination. She had no idea what lay ahead, what dangers waited for her, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't let the people after her father win. Not after everything they had been through. Mia ran toward the edge of the lot, the darkness swallowing her whole. And as she ran, she realized the truth: this wasn't just about survival. This was about defying fate. This was about rewriting her own story. And she would fight. She would survive. She would find a way. Her father had given her a choice. And no matter how far she ran, no matter how much she had to fight, she would choose her path. Her own survival. And that was something no one at all, could take away from her. Mia is left at a crossroads, making the most important choice of her life. Her father's past is finally revealed, and the story comes full circle. The lessons of survival, resilience, and personal strength resonate deeply. The final part leaves the audience wondering about Mia's future, the choices she will make, and what dangers still lie ahead. Had just passed. Destiny looked up from her book as Tasha entered, her young face lighting up with a smile. Mom, what happened? Why was there a police car outside? Tasha tried to force a smile, brushing off her daughter's question. Nothing, baby. Just a little misunderstanding. Everything's fine. But Malik, the older of the two, wasn't fooled. He was quiet for a moment, watching his mother closely with those intelligent brown eyes of his. Are you okay, Mom? Tasha's throat tightened at the concern in his voice. She didn't want to scare him, but she couldn't lie either. I'm fine, Malik. Just a little shaken up. But I'm okay. You don't have to worry about me. Her words didn't seem to comfort him, and she could tell he wasn't convinced. But before he could ask more questions, the front door creaked open. Marcus stepped inside, closing it softly behind him. "Hey, kids," he said, his voice warm but a little distant. "How are you both doing?" Malik nodded but didn't say anything. Destiny, on the other hand, jumped up from the couch, rushing to her uncle. "Uncle Marcus. Are the police gone?" "Yeah, they're gone," Marcus replied, ruffling her hair. "And everything's going to be just fine." But Tasha could see that Marcus wasn't quite as relaxed as he appeared. He was scanning the room, his eyes flicking to the windows, to the door, to every corner of the house. It was like he was on high alert, something she hadn't seen in him for years. And then, finally, his eyes landed on her. "Tasha, can we talk?" he said softly. She nodded, following him into the small kitchen. She could hear her kids in the other room, laughing, unaware of the tension in the air. She tried to push it all aside for a moment. They were safe for now. But Marcus's serious tone was impossible to ignore. "Something's not right," Marcus said, his voice low. He poured himself a glass of water, his hands steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Tasha folded her arms across her chest, leaning against the counter. "What do you mean?" "The cops are gone, Marcus. Everything's over." "Is it?" Marcus looked at her sharply. "You really think this was just some random encounter with the police? They were after something. Or someone." Tasha frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I was just standing outside. Why would they target me?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a slow sip of water, his eyes never leaving her. He set the glass down, his expression hardening. "I don't know what their exact motive was, but I've been doing this long enough to recognize when something isn't right. The way they acted, the way they spoke to you, it wasn't just about you. They were sent to intimidate, to make you comply. But there's more to it." Tasha felt a chill creep up her spine. "Who would send them after me?" Marcus hesitated, the weight of his words heavy in the air. "I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out." A sense of dread began to wash over her, something that had been growing ever since the officers arrived. Tasha had always been cautious, but the thought that someone could be after her family, was something she couldn't fully grasp. What had she done to warrant this kind of attention? What had changed? "Marcus," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "What's going to happen now?" Her brother's face softened as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry. I've got a plan. I'll handle this. But I need you to stay inside tonight. Don't go anywhere. Don't answer the door unless it's me." Tasha nodded, but a knot formed in her stomach. The uncertainty was unbearable. She'd always prided herself on being independent, on taking care of herself and her children, but right now, she felt like she was powerless. She had no idea who was after her or why, but Marcus had never been wrong about these things before. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. It was Malik, standing at the entrance of the kitchen, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Mom, what's going on?" Malik asked, his voice quiet but filled with the wisdom of someone older than his years. Tasha smiled weakly, trying to push the fear aside for his sake. "Nothing, sweetie. Just a little trouble, but it's all over now." But Malik wasn't convinced. He didn't speak, but his eyes lingered on her, his face a mirror of the confusion and worry that Tasha was feeling. Marcus looked at her, his expression serious. "I think it's time I get to work. You stay here, keep an eye on the kids, and stay safe." Tasha nodded. "I will." Her brother didn't say anything else. He turned and left the kitchen, heading for the front door. Tasha's mind raced. She knew Marcus wouldn't leave her unless he had a plan. But the unknown was still overwhelming. Who had sent those officers to intimidate her? What did they want? And why had they chosen now? As the door closed behind Marcus, Tasha sank onto the couch, rubbing her temples. Her mind was a blur, the events of the night spinning in circles. She could still feel the grip of Officer Jones on her arm, the sense of helplessness that had washed over her as she stood there, unable to do anything but wait. It had all happened so quickly, and now she was left trying to make sense of it. She glanced over at Malik and Destiny, who were now sitting on the floor, playing a game together. Their laughter, innocent and carefree, cut through the tension in the air. Tasha's heart swelled with love for them, but a deep sense of fear gripped her. She had always promised herself she would protect them, keep them safe. But right now, she wasn't sure if she could. The hours seemed to stretch on forever. Tasha tried to keep herself occupied, watching TV, checking in on the kids, but her thoughts always returned to what had happened. Why had the police shown up at her door in the first place? What had Marcus meant by, "they were after something"? What if the danger wasn't over? And what if this was just the beginning? The silence in the house was deafening. Tasha sat on the couch, her fingers nervously tapping against the armrest. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It had been hours since Marcus left, and every minute felt like an eternity. The weight of his words, the uncertainty in his voice, clung to her like a heavy fog. She tried to focus on her children, on the things that mattered, but the unease gnawed at her every thought. Malik had long since gone to bed, and Destiny was curled up next to her, her tiny body a comforting presence. But even in the safety of her home, Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She had always known when danger was near, but this felt different. It wasn't just about the police officers. It was something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. Tasha glanced over at Destiny, who was fast asleep, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. For a moment, Tasha let herself feel a flicker of peace. Her children were safe here, in this house. But what about outside? What if the danger was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike? Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, breaking her from her thoughts. She reached for it quickly, her heart racing as she saw the name on the screen. Marcus. With trembling fingers, she answered the call. "Marcus," she whispered, almost afraid of what he might say. "Hey, sis," Marcus's voice came through, calm but with a hint of urgency. "I need you to listen closely. I've got some information." Tasha's pulse quickened. "What's going on? Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm fine," Marcus replied, his tone reassuring. "But we need to talk. It's not just about those cops anymore. There's something bigger going on. Something that goes beyond what I thought." Tasha sat up straighter, her heart pounding in her chest. "What do you mean? What's happening?" Marcus hesitated for a moment before speaking again, his voice lower now. "I've been digging into the officers who came to your place. They're not just regular cops. They're part of a covert operation. I don't know who's pulling the strings, but it's serious." Tasha's breath caught in her throat. "What kind of operation?" "I don't have all the details yet," Marcus said, his words clipped. "But I've got a contact who's given me some information. It's a private group. Something underground. And they've got their sights set on you." Tasha felt her heart drop. "Me? Why me?" "I don't know yet," Marcus replied, frustration evident in his voice. "But we need to be ready for anything. I don't trust those officers, and I don't trust whoever's behind this." Tasha swallowed hard, the reality of the situation hitting her full force. She had been in danger before, but nothing like this. She had always thought that, no matter what happened, she would be able to protect her kids. But now, everything felt out of her control. "Marcus, what should I do? Should I leave? Should we go somewhere else?" "I don't want you going anywhere," Marcus said firmly. "It's too risky. Stay put. Don't talk to anyone you don't know. I'm coming back to the house soon. We'll figure this out together." Tasha nodded, even though he couldn't see her. Okay. I'll wait for you. Good, Marcus said. And, Tasha, stay safe. Don't let your guard down. The line went dead, and Tasha was left alone with her thoughts. The weight of Marcus's words pressed down on her like a 1,000-pound burden. Whoever was behind this, whoever was after her, had a plan. They weren't just random officers, they were part of something much larger. And the worst part? They were coming for her. She rubbed her eyes, trying to shake the fatigue and fear that was starting to set in. Her whole life had been about survival. She had survived her difficult childhood, raising 2 kids as a single mother, balancing work and life, making sure her family was taken care of. But now, she was facing something she didn't understand, something that had the potential to destroy everything she had fought for. Suddenly, a soft knock on the door broke the silence. Tasha froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her eyes flickered to the clock. It was well past midnight. Was it Marcus returning early? Or was it someone else? Someone from that covert operation Marcus had mentioned? Tasha's heart raced as she stood, walking cautiously toward the door. She checked the peephole, but the dark silhouette outside gave her no answers. The figure seemed to be waiting, their presence unsettling. She took a step back, uncertainty flooding her veins. She didn't know who was out there, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't going to open that door without being sure. Her mind raced as she thought through the possibilities. Was it Marcus? Or someone who had come to finish what the cops had started? Taking a deep breath, she decided to play it safe. She grabbed her phone and texted Marcus. "Someone's at the door. It's late. I'm not opening it." Seconds later, her phone buzzed. "Stay put. Don't open the door unless it's me. I'm 5 minutes away." Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The figure outside didn't leave. They were still standing there, waiting. Tasha's pulse quickened as she wondered how long she could wait before something happened. Then, just as quickly as the knock had come, the figure turned and walked away. The sound of their footsteps faded into the distance, leaving Tasha standing in the doorway, staring into the darkness. What was going on? Why hadn't they just left? She closed the door and locked it again, her hand trembling slightly. A sense of dread settled over her as she waited for Marcus to arrive. She didn't know how much longer she could take the uncertainty, the feeling that something terrible was coming. But she wasn't alone. Marcus would be there soon. He would protect her. He always did. Time seemed to drag on as Tasha waited, her anxiety building with every passing minute. She checked the clock again, and then glanced at the front window. It was still dark outside, but nothing had changed. No more knocks, no more movement in the shadows. It was like the figure had never been there at all. Then she heard the unmistakable sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Her heart skipped a beat. Marcus. Tasha rushed to the door, her fingers fumbling with the lock. She swung it open just as Marcus stepped onto the porch. His face was hard, his expression unreadable, but she could see the strain in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. Tasha nodded, stepping back to let him inside. "I don't know. I'm scared, Marcus. I don't know what's happening. Who's behind this?" "I don't know yet," he said, closing the door behind him. "But we're getting closer. I've got some intel. This group, the one behind the cops, they're dangerous. I'm not sure who they work for, but they have resources. They don't stop until they get what they want." Tasha felt her stomach drop. "What do they want from me?" "I don't know," Marcus replied. "But we're going to find out." The tension in the room was palpable. Tasha sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of cold coffee. She hadn't touched it. The steam had long since vanished, leaving the drink cold, but she didn't care. She stared at it blankly, her mind miles away from the comforting thought of a warm cup. Marcus had been gone for hours, and she hadn't heard from him since he left. Every second that ticked by felt like an eternity. She tried to distract herself by cleaning up the kitchen, tidying up the living room, but nothing seemed to ease the tight knot of fear lodged deep in her chest. Every noise, every little movement outside the window, made her jump. Her senses were on edge, and it was all she could do to keep herself from constantly looking over her shoulder. Her children were still asleep, their soft breathing filling the otherwise quiet house. It was the only semblance of peace she had. But it was fleeting. Tasha glanced at the clock again. It had been almost 6 hours since Marcus left, and she couldn't shake the worry that something had gone wrong. She reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. She was about to call him when the doorbell rang. Her heart leapt into her throat. She froze, the phone slipping from her hand. Who was it this time? She stood slowly, careful to make as little noise as possible. The house was still, the children blissfully unaware of the danger lurking outside. She crept towards the front door, her ears straining for any hint of movement on the other side. A soft knock followed the doorbell. Whoever it was, they weren't leaving. Tasha's breath hitched. She didn't recognize the voice that came through the crack in the door. Tasha? It's me, Marcus. Let me in. Relief flooded her, but it was quickly replaced with a fresh wave of anxiety. What had taken Marcus so long? Had something happened? Was he okay? She unlocked the door and opened it, but the sight that greeted her made her heart skip a beat. Marcus stood on the porch, but he wasn't alone. A man she didn't recognize stood beside him, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothes, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He looked serious, too serious, and something about the way he stood, like he was guarding Marcus, sent a chill down her spine. Who's this? Tasha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. This is Jack, Marcus said, his voice guarded. He's with me. We need to talk, Tasha. Tasha stepped aside, allowing them both in, though her instincts told her she should be more cautious. The way Marcus's eyes darted around, checking every corner of the room, made her even more nervous. She wasn't sure who this Jack was, but if Marcus trusted him, she'd have to put her trust in him too. Once they were inside, Marcus closed the door behind them, locking it securely. Jack remained silent, his presence almost imposing. Tasha felt the weight of his gaze on her as he scanned the house, making sure nothing was out of place. Tasha, sit down, Marcus said, his voice urgent. We don't have much time. Tasha took a seat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly. Marcus pulled out a chair and sat across from her, Jack standing by the door, watching her closely. We've got a problem, Marcus continued, his tone serious. It's worse than I thought. This operation, the people behind it, they don't just target random individuals. They've been planning this for months. And you're in their sights, Tasha. Tasha's heart thudded in her chest. What do you mean, they've been planning this for months? Who are these people? Marcus exchanged a look with Jack, who nodded and stepped forward, pulling out a file from his bag. He slid it across the table toward Tasha. It was thick, with pages of documents and photos clipped together. This, Jack said, his voice low, is a private contractor group. They're military-grade, highly skilled, and extremely secretive. They operate in the shadows, doing work for people who can't be traced, government agencies, foreign powers, and anyone with enough money to pay for their services. Tasha's mind raced as she picked up the file and flipped through it. There were photos of people she didn't recognize, men and women in military fatigues, some with their faces obscured. There were detailed reports of operations, some of which took place in countries Tasha couldn't pronounce. And then, in the last few pages, her own name appeared in bold print. What the hell is this? Tasha whispered. Why is my name here? Jack leaned against the counter, folding his arms across his chest. They've been tracking you for a while now. It looks like they were trying to figure out your routine, your habits. We think it's all tied to the cops who came to your house. Marcus took over, his eyes filled with urgency. They sent those cops to intimidate you, to test the waters. They wanted to see how you'd react, see how easy you'd be to manipulate. They've been watching you, Tasha, and they're not going to stop until they get what they want. Tasha's head was spinning. But why me? What do I have that they want? I don't know, Marcus admitted, his expression dark. But whatever it is, it's important. And we need to find out before they move in on you again. We need to prepare, Tasha. This isn't going to be over anytime soon. Her mind swirled with questions, but there was one she had to ask. What's the next step? What do we do now? Marcus glanced at Jack, who nodded before speaking. We've got a contact who can help us get more information on these people. But we need to move fast. The longer we wait, the more likely they'll close in on you. Tasha felt the weight of the situation settle heavily on her shoulders. It was one thing to know something was wrong, but it was another thing entirely to know she was being targeted by an underground, powerful group. What kind of life had she been living to fall into the crosshairs of these people? Okay, Tasha said, her voice shaking slightly but determined. I'll do whatever it takes to protect my kids. But how do we get ahead of them? How do we stop them? First, Marcus said, his tone firm, we need to keep a low profile. No more running around town, no more attracting attention. We stay here, stay quiet. And we gather everything we can on this group. Tasha nodded, her fear turning into something else, something fierce. She wasn't going to let them take away the only thing that mattered to her, her family. She'd fought too hard to get here. She wasn't going to let some unknown group tear it all apart. Okay, she said, a new sense of resolve in her voice. Let's do it. Let's find out who's behind this and stop them before they hurt anyone else. Hours later, Tasha was sitting in the living room, staring at the file once again. Marcus and Jack were in the kitchen, speaking in low tones, their voices too distant for her to catch all the words. Her mind couldn't stop spinning. The mystery was deeper than she'd imagined, and each new revelation made her feel more exposed, more vulnerable. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Whoever these people were, they were going to come after her again. And when they did, she had to be ready. The silence in the house was overwhelming. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the window felt like a warning. Tasha sat at the kitchen table, staring down at the file in front of her. Her hands, now shaking slightly, trembled with a mixture of fear and determination. She had never felt more exposed, more vulnerable, but she wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. She had been fighting for her family for as long as she could remember, and she wasn't about to stop now. The thought of losing her children, of losing everything she had worked for, was a nightmare too real to even consider. The group, this shadowy force, had taken too much already. Her life had already been torn apart, but now, they were threatening to rip everything away. Tasha's eyes flickered to the door. Marcus and Jack had been gone for nearly an hour. She hated waiting. The minutes stretched into what felt like endless hours. She couldn't just sit here and do nothing. She had to act. She had to find the answers she needed. The phone buzzed in her hand, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text message from Marcus. We have a plan. We're going to need you to trust us, Tasha. Don't make any moves. Stay where you are. Her heart sank. Don't make any moves. It was the same warning he had given her over and over. And yet, she couldn't help herself. The fear that clung to her every waking moment made her want to take action, to be proactive, to do something. Tasha felt like she was suffocating under the weight of all the unknowns. Who were these people? What did they want from her? And why were they willing to go to such extreme lengths to destroy her life? The questions gnawed at her, but every time she thought she might have a clear answer, a new twist appeared. She stood up, pacing around the kitchen, her mind whirling. I can't just wait here, she whispered to herself. I need to do something. It wasn't long before the sound of a car engine echoed outside, followed by the unmistakable screech of tires. Her heart skipped a beat. A knock at the door shattered the silence. She froze, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Tasha. We know you're in there. Open up. A voice she didn't recognize. Menacing. Demanding. It wasn't the voice of an officer. It wasn't even the voice of someone who sounded like they were playing by the rules. These were people who took what they wanted. They didn't ask for permission. Tasha's pulse raced. Every instinct in her screamed to run. But she couldn't. Her children were upstairs, and leaving now would put them in harm's way. She heard footsteps on the porch, the heavy, deliberate sound of boots against the wooden steps. They were getting closer. Marcus, she whispered to herself, hoping he was on his way, praying he would get there in time. The tension in her chest was unbearable, and she could feel her fingers tightening around the handle of the kitchen knife. But her mind kept returning to her kids. They had to be her priority. Another knock. Louder this time. Tasha. We know you're in there. If you don't open this door, we'll come in ourselves. It was almost like they were playing a game. But this wasn't a game. Not anymore. Her phone buzzed once more, and she quickly grabbed it. Another message from Marcus. They're at the door. Get the kids and hide. I'm almost there. Stay quiet. Her breath caught. She had no time to waste. Tasha rushed upstairs, her heart pounding. She threw open the door to Malik and Destiny's room. Both of her children were still asleep, unaware of the danger creeping closer to their doorstep. Malik. Destiny. Wake up, she whispered, shaking them both gently. They stirred, groggy from sleep, but Tasha could see the confusion in their eyes as they tried to focus. Mom, what's happening? Malik mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Shoo, listen to me. We have to go. Now, Tasha said, her voice urgent. She didn't have time to explain. There was no time for questions. She had to get them out of here before the people at the door could find them. She moved quickly, pulling them both into the hallway. Her mind raced, searching for a place to hide. The basement. It was the only place she could think of. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and motioned for the kids to follow. They didn't question her, they trusted her. But Tasha could see the fear in their eyes. It mirrored her own. Come on, let's go, she said, taking their hands and leading them toward the basement door. As they moved through the house, the knocking at the front door became louder. The men outside were growing impatient. Tasha's heart was in her throat. They didn't have much time. Get in the basement, now, she urged, pushing the kids ahead of her. She flicked on the flashlight, casting an eerie glow over the stairs. Just as they reached the bottom, Tasha heard the sound of the front door crashing open. Her heart pounded in her chest. She hurried to the far corner of the basement, motioning for Malik and Destiny to huddle close. She stood still, her breath shallow, every muscle in her body tense with fear. The sound of heavy boots echoed from upstairs. And then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed again. We're almost there, Tasha. Stay hidden. Do not make a sound. Marcus. Thank God. Tasha squeezed her children's hands, silently praying that they would stay quiet. Every moment felt like an eternity. The sound of footsteps grew louder. Closer. But then, just as suddenly as they had arrived, the footsteps stopped. A gunshot rang out from upstairs.